Thank you for tuning in to the World Builder's Anvil, Season 2, Episode 20. To the framework and beyond!
Don't know where to start building your fantasy world?
Do you need more? Does it make sense?
Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination.
This is the place where we will prime your mind.
Now, it's time to heat up the forge.
Break out the mithril ingots and hammer.
Welcome to the World Builder's Anvil. I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And I'm Michael Miller.
Let's sup from the muck of Java and build.
Thank you for coming back. My name is Jeffrey W. Ingram. Welcome to the World Builder's Anvil. As always, I am here with
Michael Miller, and this is going to be a very depressing story because it's a Pixar reference.
You know I don't sound like that. I at least didn't make up a voice for you.
That was a good voice, though.
Well, it wasn't. It was terrible.
Not for you.
No, it was awful. Hey, I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram. I like to make worlds.
I'm Michael Miller. I poop in my pants.
Well, you know, look, sometimes things happen, so. Okay.
There's a character from Dirty Rotten Scoundrels based on Michael Miller.
There's very few people who are going to get that one.
But you got it.
Yeah, that's a movie I should rewatch. I can't remember the last time I saw that movie. Like,
Neither
it's
can I.
probably been 20 years.
But the scene I'm thinking of is coming right to my head. Right to my head.
Can I go to the bathroom?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
That's one of my favorite lines of movie history.
It's a great movie. It's a funny line. I like when Michael Caine gets a run up and wails him in the legs with the switch. Like, yeah, this man can't feel a thing. Anyway, so maybe let's get to something.
Let's get to something here. Let's get to finishing the framework here. You know, so we talked about last time, and really it's kind of like, where do you go from the framework, right? So this was originally planned to be the end of the season until I realized that I needed one more thing. And
always one more
the
thing.
idea is,
Jeff.
you know, where you go forward from world building is one place. One place. That's it. Just one. And the place you're going to is actually just like completely leaving my brain. No, you're going to the details.
I was going to say Tennessee,
Georgia, but you're going to get to the details now. You know, because ultimately, a framework, like I said, you're not ready to start world after you have a framework done, probably, unless you're really experienced. Because you'd be winging it like 100%, which is fine in certain scenarios, but usually it's the devil in the details is what makes something good. You know, it's like it's memorable moments and items and locations that stick and make people geek out like 100 years later. You know, it's like I'm a fan of The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. And Prime is getting ready to release a TV series based off of The Wheel of Time. I have no clue how they're going to pull this off. They're going to have to cut like a lot of stuff just to get it to work, because it's like, I think 14 or 15 books.
Is it a series? It's a full blown series they're making, like multi-season sort of thing?
Well, I mean, to do book one, I guess you could do a season, but that's not. It's like a scratch of The Wheel of Time. You know, like I said, it's like 14 or 15 novels. So get reading it if you haven't, folks. But they keep releasing things where they take an item from the book, and you see like the concept art, and then they go and they use CGI to phase it into its physical prop. So it takes you from the concept phase all the way to the physical representation it will take in the show, which one is like, hey, they're going to actually use physical props. It won't all be CGI. That's a good thing. You know, hence Lord of the Rings versus The Hobbit.
Yeah.
And the other thing that is, you know, it's like they there's like certain items that if they show, it just makes me go, oh, it's that. And right now I'm in the phase of like, well, will this character be there or will this character be there? I don't know if this character's going to be there. Oh my goodness, that's horrible if this character's not going to be there. But how do you include them? Or out of the 5,000 different settings that they used in the Wheel of Time series, I'm pretty sure they can't have them all, in any TV production or movie production because it's just too many characters, too many locations. The thing is, it's the mere fact that they take they show a roof of an inn and I go, oh, that's the Wine Spring Inn. Even though it's not, and it doesn't look quite right, but it's close enough. And oh, okay. But, cause it's the first book, it's the first real location in the book is the Wine Spring Inn. But they show that you're like, oh, it's coming. That's the beginning. They're taking me to the beginning. So, but you get excited over these things if you are a fan. It's and we've talked about this before. It's moments, it's characters, it's always the details that people remember. They'll have patterns, which they kind of remember the story, but it's the details that come up in that pattern that are the things that people really love. It's some of the details in Lord of the Rings. Maybe some of the songs or learning that Smaug is missing like one little space under his belly. It's that one little space that you remember about Smaug more so than you'll remember any other description about the dragon.
Well, I mean, it's Tom Bombadil. I mean, right?
He wasn't in the movie, so
no,
he's gone.
I know.
Surprised they didn't have the entire subplot as a deleted scene.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not terribly surprised because they would have had to spend some money to make some of those interactions and
some of those scenes.
Seeing how they weren't willing to spring for extras, and they decided just to CGI everybody. So,
well, especially in The Hobbit, yeah.
But that's my point. Yeah, that's when you would have seen it.
But then you focus on the bear dude. Really? Okay. Yeah. Tom Bombadil's a much better character. Everyone knows it. But yeah, Abby, sometimes the things they miss are the things that mess you up when they go between media. Like I really love this character and you cut this character out. But if they're a small minor character in one town, they got to make sacrifices to make a movie. There's only so many characters, so many budgets, so many locations. Even if they put the money in like they did in Lord of the Rings, there's still things they have to cut out. They just don't have enough. You'll never have enough time. And if you make it all, the 75 movies it would take would be really boring, each and every one of them. So yes, that's when you overpad. It's like the last book of every trilogy they make now, which they have 2 or 3. They like to make 2 or 3 movies per book now. So that's always a mistake. It doesn't fit the movie medium. Now, review your story outline. So when you move forward from your framework, and I said create your story outline, review it one last time before you go out. See if there's any glaring things that you're missing that would be helpful to you that you think you might need. If you think you might need them, make them before you go on. Because once you do that, you're going to sit there and go, I'm going to go to the details. So going back to the World Builder 2.0 mind map down below is now, the first time you go in and you answer these really basic questions, but now you want to go in and start getting very specific on, okay, I know I need a religion for a culture. So I want to take what I know of the culture and I want to develop a religion from it. And out of that religion, there are certain kinds of ceremonies that are going to be important storytelling wise. Let me start developing some of these important ceremonies. Like there's going to be a rite of passage for one of the female characters, or there's going to be a marriage ceremony. What will that look like for this group of people on this world in the time setting with the magic at hand? What's that going to look like compared to now? Or they're going to banish a demon from the world, and that's a religious ceremony. What would that ceremony look like? So you're trying to start capturing what are the details I'm going to need, and then you can either build the details and then try and see if the connections go back, or sort of layer and depth until you get to those details. Like, okay, let me get more specific on the type of religion it is, the type of ceremonies they do. What are the basic beliefs and basic tenets, you know, which will typically be tied very closely to whatever culture um, um, has the religion. I mean, essentially, religion and culture are very tightly coupled. So maybe not at every point of time, but in most points of time, that's true. And at least in ancient days. So, but you're starting to identify the details that you need. You know, you kind of need an inventory. We talked about this before. For world building, you need a story inventory. What are the set pieces I need? So, like if we're making a movie, right? If you have 35 towns you have to make sets for, you know, that's when you cut 5 towns out, you know, or in the movie, they decide to do it in 5 towns instead of 35 because they want to have some good sets. But if they make 35 sets, they'll have 35 bad sets. So they'll make 5 good sets and then they'll try and reutilize those to do all of it. Or they'll just walk around New Zealand. That's the other theory. Just walk around New Zealand for the entire story.
It's not a bad plan.
It's not a bad plan. Yeah. It worked for 3 movies.
Well, that's one of the reasons there's so many. Like, what's funny is like when I moved to New York, I walked around that city and there were so many places that I'd never been to before that felt really familiar. And my brain is going, I've been here before, but I know that I hadn't. And it's because they shoot so many movies in New York that most of the city will feel familiar to you if you're a big movie watcher, even if you've never
especially
been there.
For someone like you, who you get into the sets, you get into all
yes.
of that.
But the other thing is because of that, or rather the reason they do that is because all you have to do is turn a camera on in New York City and you have immediate production value. So with New Zealand, it's the same. All you have to do is turn a camera on and point it anywhere in that country. It's gorgeous. You have production
different
value.
Kind of production value,
yeah.
but a production
very
value.
different. Yes.
Yeah. The opposite production value, but Tokyo is just too loud. I'm joking. I'm sure Tokyo's, you know, just the same. But certain cities that have its own unique flair have their own unique flair. Like Tokyo probably does. I don't know. I've never been there. So I'm going to stop talking about Tokyo.
I'm to put that on my list.
Okay. So, but now, you know, you actually, you know, when I talk about the devil in the details, you know, you're trying to find the details that are needed because, you know, you're right. You know, I don't know how many rituals there are in Christianity. I have no clue. There are some biggies. You don't even need to account for all the big ones. You might not know how weddings work in a culture that you've world built, even if it's a very detailed world build. You might not know what it's like when they get married. You might have an idea, and it might be easy for you to throw that together if you ever do need it, but you don't need to create the ritual if you're not going to use it. If it's not important, you don't need it. And now, you know, typically beginning of life, you know, rite of passage stuff, including marriage, possibly divorces are sometimes important in stories. Death rites, you know, death rites are usually the most important because, let's be honest, stories typically have death more than anything else. But how they treat and act there tells the audience something about those people. And so when it's good to have them interact with fantasy rituals, but if they're not going to interact with them, you don't need to know them. I've never been in a game, and I've run lots of games, and I've written stories, and I've never had someone go, "How do they do baptism here? I don't see a baptism." I was wondering.
Yeah, we've never had we've never had one of those. Could we go find a funeral in town? You know, no one in our party has died, but I was just wanting to walk around until I find a funeral so I could watch it. Walk around until I find a funeral.
It's like, no. And as a game master, you just throw random encounters until they stop. I guess you're not finding a funeral today. We've run out of time for this session. Maybe you won't think about it next session.
You'll be at one soon enough if you keep pushing this button.
Well, are you looking for a funeral? Okay, a dragon comes out of the ground. But yeah, but it's good to have the details. So if you plan to have them in there, by all means, develop it. And if it's interesting and you have an idea, and you just want to flesh it out, that's cool too. But don't feel like there's a checklist. And sometimes you say you look at like a lot of these world building lists, and it's like there's like you have to check off a whole bunch of things, which might or might not be important. Say if I'm talking about like culture B showing up and invading the lands of culture A, like let's say in our story, right? They probably have a very developed cuisine from where they're at. And it's good to know maybe a thing or two that annoys the invaders that isn't present. Like, how do you not have allspice? You need allspice. These heathens don't have allspice. How do they eat food here?
Yeah,
And it's good to have
no
a thing or two
adobo on the table
that deviate to show the differences between the people. And something very basic, like if you go into their country, they have spices that you're not used to, or spices that you miss because you like them. And it's good to bring those things up. That's like how a fish out of water is useful in storytelling. But the thing is, you don't need a fully developed cuisine for the people who are invading because they don't have all of the things to make their foods. You're going to talk about some of the basic meals that people eat probably where you're at. And you will have some other characters grumbling because it's not right in their mind. And it's flawed here and it's flawed here. And they will explain a few things, but you don't need to fully develop culture B's cuisine just because you have a meal or two in your book. You need to understand the meal or two you're making for the book and go, okay, I need to world build the elements to be able to do those meals. Or sit there and go, hey, you know what? It's a bunch of farm stuff and meat that's stewed together. Yes. Now, I think the biggest question really is to know, when do you have enough? This can vary. If you're doing something static like a novel or like let's say a single person video game that you want to like indie release somewhere, you need all of the elements developed for your project that are required for the project to be packaged as it's sent out, or God knows in modern gaming terms, after 522 patches.
Mm-hmm. I was about to say, they send them out incomplete all the time.
Oh, this is the 400th DLC this year. Only 99 cents.
Yeah.
This is a new set of clothing for your
also there'll be patch updates to fix X, Y, and Z.
But the idea is you just need enough, but for those kind of things you need all of your elements. So if you're shipping something, it needs to be complete in the form it's supposed to be when it ships. You will probably have more than what you ship, but you don't need an entire world if you're talking about an island on a world. You need the island, and like I said, some stuff around there.
That sounds poignant.
Yeah,
kind of on the nose.
Make what you need. If you're doing a role-playing game, it's where you're starting. Most game sessions, will probably have about 2 major encounters, and that means combat, because dice rolling just wastes time. If you're using a typical a D&D style game or GURP style game, there's time you spent in combat. If you have a couple big fights, that's most of a game session. You'll have some interactions and talking and movings in between. But really, you kind of need where you're at and the next couple spots. I always say it's always good to have I don't like random encounters, but what I like to have is sort of pocket encounters. Or maybe there's random encounters like if you're in a city. Like if you look like a mark, you might have brigands. But now the brigands might look at you and go, oh, I'm not going to mess with that person. He has plate mail plus 34 of holy shitness on.
Not that they're going to know the stats by looking at you, but if you're wearing something super awesome
to cut his purse, and I'm going to look at his armor and go, oh, never mind. But maybe the person in the plus 30 armor goes, hey, I just saw that guy. I bet that's a thief. And I'm a lawful good, super goody, lawful good guy. And so now I must arrest him because I could see his intention of committing crime. He's a criminal. He's probably robbed someone else today. I'm going to bring this guy to justice. So maybe you still have the encounter, but it's actually different than the typical encounter would be. Oh, you have a country bumpkin in the big city for the first time. He gets mugged. welcome to New York. Now, after you get through there,
do you have a like I'm trying to think of something specific that you've had to build for where you had to ask yourself that question, like, when do you have enough? Well, like, I mean, for your novel, how did you answer that question?
When I knew all of the characters, to start, right, I needed to know all of the important characters. So the protagonist, the antagonist, there are two characters around the protagonist, the family of the protagonist. There are some first act villains and who actually go beyond the first act a little bit, but they're truly meant to be villains for the first act, who then are reoccurring characters afterwards. But it kind of shows the way the world is at this point. So that's act one, is introducing you to what the world is. And so through that part of the journey, there are characters who are villains for just that part, and they are reoccurring and they pop up afterwards, but their roles become diminished. But I need to know them still. I roughly know the population size and density of where I'm at, but I don't know all of the characters. Don't get me wrong. When I was younger, I actually started creating a sheet of every villager in this small village.
Really?
And that will go into my next point, but which is don't forget that you're on a full-fledged fiddle battle for your soul. So
now
don't get sucked in.
Can I explain that one for a second? Because there may be a lot of people that don't know that reference. So the basic gist is it's going to be a difficult thing for you to know when and where to stop. You're going to want to keep going. The fiddle battle reference is from a song. So this guy basically bets the devil that he can play the fiddle better than the devil can. So that's what Jeff is referring to.
Yeah, and I have lost at this battle in my life. If you
I think we all have.
You will lose this battle. It's okay. Just when you realize that you've lost the battle and you've been doing it for a month longer than you should have been, wrap it up.
Time to wrap it up.
But essentially, at a minimum, you need to be able to visualize the stuff in your head. So when a certain character, I go, okay, I'm gonna go to this character. I need to understand the important characters in my head. Okay, I'm taking a new input for that character into my eyes. I'm going to process and be able to output that character's response. That's when I'm ready. And it might be a quick reference to notes. You might have, like, I have quick sheets with references, like, this is a character's motivation, that kind of stuff, a character quick reference sheet. So I know, like, oh, wait, right. This person always overreacts, except when it's violence or whatever. Make them however you want to. That's just
then the reaction is completely justified.
Then it's always justified. But it's when you can visualize the answers. And like I said, a lot of times when I've talked to people who've been stuck storytelling and world building, it's one, they have no goal of where they're going to. So they'll go, well, I'm going to focus on the structure of storytelling. I'm going to focus on everything except for the story that they want to tell, and fleshing that out. But, it's like, if you're stuck on a character, write a short story about them. In a similar circumstance, you need to understand your characters, especially for the way I like stories. It's more about characters, I believe. So when you know the characters and you have a feeling for the environment that they're in, you can proceed. And sometimes it's best to not have too much locked down until you canonize it in word or story. You have ideas and you have so like a framework. I'm pretty good at being able to fill in details, make notes, and canonize it as I go. but that's harder when you're storytelling, when you're writing, because you're writing down the actual story. So whenever you have enough that you can move forward, and write the next chapter, really, that's when you have enough.
Good answer.
And you're done when the projects that you're working with the world are done. You're done. There'll be lots of ugly, untied loose ends, unless you just want to screw around with them later on.
And I've, as I get older, I have been wrapping my head around a number of different things in my life where I get hung up about comfort and completion. And what I find serves me better, and this is two thoughts. One, the concept of what serves you and what doesn't. If something isn't serving you, let it go. If it's not serving you, let it go. If it's a thought that's hurting you, whether it's a thought that you're thinking about or something you're telling yourself, or if it's something revolving around your project that you're saying, oh, well, this isn't good enough, or it's not this, or it's not that, or it is this, and I don't want it to be whatever, let it go. And the other thing is comfort and completeness. Try to wrap your head around and adopt a perspective of enjoying being uncomfortable, and also getting that your projects will probably never be complete the way you want them to be. You're probably going to get them to a point, push past them with a new idea, and then start another one. It'll be finished, but not ever complete. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe you'll complete it. Some people work on the same project their entire lives. Look at Tolkien. He worked on Middle Earth forever. Mm-hmm. But was it ever complete? No. And that's a really great example of my point. But take that on. It's okay that it not be complete.
That's why I say have your goals. And even if you spend all of your life in one world, you can just keep coming up with new goals to do, and you'll flesh out new details, and things will start to mesh together over time. But you can complete a goal. Completing a world is a dream. Completing a universe is a dream. Those are things you can never achieve. You can't reproduce billions of years of history. That right and wrong decisions from millions of people, have taken to get our world to where it is today. Billions of people, really. Maybe trillions of people. I don't know how many people there have been so far. I think trillions. Let's say there's been 1 trillion people. It took all of them doing right and wrong things over thousands of years to get us to where we are at in humanity today in 2021, which says how lacking we are as humans. But we are definitely not a perfect species. But the point is, is you can't do that. You cannot. So, and if you try, the devil will have your soul. Tolkien never finished Middle Earth, but you know what? He finished stories.
Mm-hmm. Books.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes you need someone else's help. Wheel of Time, I think the author died going into the last book. It was 15 books. He wrote 14, or he wrote 13. And then someone else was hired by his editor/wife to write the last book, but they ended up making it 2 books because it was just too much source material, and probably could have been another 3 or 4 books, really. There was just so much left to resolve. But and once again, that story could have gone on forever because it was a true epic, right? It was a true ongoing circular epic. So, you have to have goals. When you reach them, say it's done, and start another goal in that world, start another world, whatever you want to do. But accept your decisions and move on. And later on, if you want to go back and revisit it, you can. Now, and remember that your framework building is not done until your storytelling is done, until you're done in the world. So for us, season 2 will never end. There's always going to be, we'll come up with things, and there will be things that are about the things. And so there'll always be more framework we could make. That's why we're not trying to complete the framework now, because I know we're going to have to go back to it. And I actually want to show going back to it, which is why I've purposefully not covered some things I was planning to do in season 1 because it really wasn't needed, or season 2. I'm sorry, or 1. Or I'm already getting confused, and we only have 2 seasons. But there's some stuff I actually plan to do here, framework wise, to have ready. But I'm like, no, because it'd be a great reason to go back and say, hey, framework, do your framework every time, because that gets you set and ready to go into the details. And then hey, once you get through there, get the story out, or whatever your goal is. I always say story is a goal because those are my goals, but your learning objective, whatever, focus on it, get it done. That's all that's left. All right.
Alrighty, you got a world builder task?
Yes, I do. Plan to store non-essential notes. So as you go along, if you're writing stories, you should be ready. Anytime you're doing this kind of creative work, you need to have, it's usually best for me if I have a notebook. Like I have this giant notebook right here next to my desk. It's like a drawing notebook that is full of notes. And I'll sometimes take pictures of it and I'll email them to myself so I can make it electronic really fast. Or if it's in my Rocket Wave notebook, I could take a smaller picture to send it, into my folder directories. But be prepared that you're going to come up with like a new culture when you're writing. Sometimes like 2 people will be talking and they'll start insulting a group of people that you never even talked about before. Make a note of those people because later on you might want to build a framework for them and they might become more important, or maybe they just become a note that, hey, in chapter 2 I talked about these jerks, and maybe they never come up again, or maybe in a different story they invade and destroy the entire civilization because of what the person said in chapter 2.
I mean, look, you got a whole trilogy of books out of a side note and someone's inquiry.
Yeah.
All right. So real world task. I'm not going to veto this one because I really like this. You got a winner here this week. When was the last time you helped another person?
Mm-hmm. This is not said in a judgmental way. This is said in a, I'm sick of being stuck in my home pandemic way. And when you're stuck at home, a lot of times it's really easy to become self-centered because you don't see other people. And maybe it's because I work out of my house and I record out of my house, and I technically don't need to leave my house, but I'm an extrovert and I love being around other people. So it sucks that way for me, but it's easy to forget that there are other people in the world for reals. So part of this is just from an empathetic standpoint to remember that, wait, I'm not the only jerk in the world. There are many other jerks, and there's actually some nice people too. And maybe there's something I can do to help now. But just get in the process of reminding yourself that, especially in an age where we can use phones and computers and smartwatches to communicate with people, sometimes we lose the perspective that there are other humans in the world. And for me, this is as much saying, remember, humanity, goes beyond you and your household, and goes to all people, irregardless of if they're right. Like Michael's still a person, even though he's so often wrong.
There's another thing that I was this ties in with something else that I'm working on. So I'm just going to leave everybody with the idea of try to make 2 people smile today, and one of them should be you.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Yeah. 2 people smile today. We'll have to make that a reoccurring one. I think that's a good one.
Well, no, we can't do that for this show because I want that to be a big theme on my other show.
Okay. Well, I'm going to use that every week. That's going to be my
No, don't. You can't steal.
Make 2 people smile today, folks.
I hesitated to share it, but I was like, you know what? If I don't share it, I am being selfish. So I'm going to share it, but with the caveat that we don't.
Teasing the idea. So
yes, I am teasing an idea. So
you're such a tease.
I try. Folks. Talk to you guys next week.
Yep. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anvil.
We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends.
And so would they.
If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting.
Take them to Stitcher or iTunes, or best of all, just send them to our website, www.gardul.com.
That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.